This playthrough is rated M for mature.
Greetings and salutations, viewers. Vauldemare back here with more bonus content to Mass Effect. Probably the last one, unless something comes up. It's the Mass Effect, basically bonus disc. Like back in the day, back in, I think this is when this game came out, 2007, when you pre-ordered the game, you could get the collector's edition, which all it was just a fancy case, which is pretty cool. Kind of like it's like a metal case with like has a cover with like Shepard and I think Garrison Ashley on the front, and then the iron cover has or the little metal cover has Saren and the Geth like on the bottom of it, and on the back has Shepard, Garrus, Rex, and Ashley on it. Although the Shepard that they do here doesn't look like the Mark Meer version. I don't know. Maybe it's pre, or maybe that's what it looked like in the art rendering for it or whatever. But it also came with like a art book and like and this bonus disc and everything like that. And what it is basically just a bonus disc that just one has. I might have to check on that as well just to see what it is. But it's basically just an extras disc. Like talks about the art of the game, the storytelling and stuff like that. And it has like commentary and from the, I believe it has commentary if I recall on it. So basically this whole episode is maybe might do some minor commentary, but for the most part I'll probably just let it run and let it play as is. For those who are interested. Although, I wonder if you could probably still find this disc. I bet someone's uploaded it online, or maybe you could probably get it on eBay if you really care for it. But, yeah, let's start with the introduction. Just kind of play it through and see what happens.
Hi, I'm Casey Hudson, Project Director on Mass Effect. Now, it took a team of 120 people here at BioWare and countless others around the world to complete this truly enormous project. And to show you how we did it, we've created 4 unique documentaries, starting with the vision of Mass Effect, which looks at the inspirations for the game. Then, the making of Mass Effect looks at the actual production of the game and shows how the art, design, and programming all came together to bring the game to life. Interactive storytelling looks at how we bring an interactive cinematic experience to the next level using special technology for digital actors that we've developed here at BioWare. And finally, Inside BioWare takes you behind the scenes and introduces you to the people who actually worked on the game, and looks at BioWare's history from the Baldur's Gate series to Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic and beyond. We've also added a special selection of music from the soundtrack, and you can view hundreds of images in the design galleries with commentary by the actual artists themselves. Enjoy.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. That pretty much tells you what the whole game's going to be about, which, like what's going to be inside of it by Casey Hudson and the crew, which I bet you dollars to donuts that like 90% of those people don't even work there anymore. I know Casey Hudson left like a few years ago, and I bet a lot of the original crew went on to work on their own projects and left the company, so... Yeah, I mean, this isn't going to be like a current BioWare thing, but let's just say corporate crap and all that. So let's just enjoy it as is. Sorry for getting off track. So, yeah, we're just going to go down the list. So, like I said, I don't know how long this episode's going to be. It's been forever since I've watched this stuff. So just let's just enjoy it, shall we, with the documentaries. Okay, yeah, so most of these are probably going to run the rest of the... Let's see. So, yeah, it's going to be... Let me look at the other things first. Oh, yeah, I guess... You can listen to the soundtrack here. Does that have a little description on it? I mean, we know all the... Oops. Now my little... my little, directional pad's not working on my Xbox controller, so... Well, this thing is pretty old anyway, so... Yeah, it's got all the... I guess I could skip probably listening to this, because you can find a lot of this stuff online. So, so there's that. Let's see what it says on the introduction part.
Welcome to the soundtrack. Now, I think the music is one of the most unique parts of the Mass Effect experience. And just like Mass Effect is kind of a nostalgia for the great science fiction movies of the late 70s and early 80s, the music is kind of a throwback to the ambient electronica and haunting orchestral scores of the great movies of that period. And so we hope you enjoy this special selection of music composed by Jack Wall and Sam Hulick.
I think he makes a good point. Yeah, it did kind of sound like very old school, like, you know, all you have to throw in is oh, what's the name of that one device? It's where you run your hands over. It's like, woo! You just have to throw in some of that, and you get some old school sci-fi right there. But yeah, I love the soundtrack in the game. I think it works definitely well for it. Got, you know, it's got ambiance, you know, scene setting, you know, action, and all that other stuff. So, is it the best soundtrack out there? Well, obviously, probably not. But for what it needs for the game, I definitely think it is. But yeah, if you like the music, you can easily hear most of it online. I don't need to play it here. So, and then yeah, we'll do the documentaries I think last after we go over to everything else, since those will take the longest. So, design galleries. Okay, this is the little picture thing. So.
Welcome to the design galleries. Now we've got hundreds of images in here, covering the creatures, the environments, and the technology of Mass Effect. And every image has commentary by the artists themselves, talking about their original concepts and carrying that through to the final game. There's a lot of really cool stuff in here, and we hope you enjoy it.
And of course, some of the art is like that like they set up and then actually keep some of the artwork. I do actually have the official art book for the first game. I think I even got the one for the second game. I didn't get it for the third game or Andromeda, but I don't know if they made one for Andromeda. So yeah, you can tell I was really into Mass Effect. Not like crazy, like I dress up as characters at a convention, which is nothing wrong with that. Just I never go into that detail, but I really did like this world and what they were setting up. Too bad it kind of just, I wouldn't say, I mean, it didn't crash and burn per se, but like where it was going never went anywhere. And you could probably blame, like I said, you could probably blame the studio, or I think shortly after this, like a few years later, they got Pandemic, who technically they were under Pandemic, and then EA bought out Pandemic, and then they closed Pandemic after they got it and used BioWare's IPs for their own. And that's kind of where it started going downhill slowly. You could kind of tell, at least in terms of like quality and all this other stuff. And well, I guess that's a bit unfair, but anyway, I'm not going to go into details, so let's go to the gallery designs. Alright, let's look over the lovely Asari. So we're just going to, I'm just going to play them all, so we'll just let the kind of thing run and then, you know, enjoy it as you will.
So as a new concept artist, first job ever, showing up at this company and getting onto a new project that's just beginning, hearing that I get to design a race of alien space babes was just about the best news I had ever heard. I was pinching myself for about a week, thinking like, no, I'm not getting paid for this. Seriously, they can't be actually paying me to draw this. So this was the beginning of the development, just going through just a lot of references and just trying to come up with ways of making chicks that are obviously aliens but still attractive, and just seeing where that line is, what you can get away with, how much you can change on it. So again, more Asari exploration, just trying to see, you know, how much to preserve, how much to move apart. You know, some of the girl in the top right here is just way too far. She's, you know, she's lost most of her skull, and her eyes are too wide apart and everything. So it's definitely not someone you can develop an interest in. Girl on the bottom left, again, too alien, just the big dark eyes and the alien-shaped head. There's a certain level of familiarity that you need in order to preserve that. The girl with this line down her face, pretty much just a girl with a line down her face, but then at the same time, yeah, she's not that alien. Again, you know, experimenting with patterns on the face, with changing the physiology, all of that sort of thing. It was definitely a fun exploration. Here, just playing again with. This is where we really started to. Here, just playing again with what we can change, what we can move around. What is alien? When we're gonna describe this is one of the beginning stages where. You know, we're creating a whole other alien race. Alien race is, and this was one of the beginning steps. This is where we really started to figure out what we were trying to say with the Asari. We realized that we couldn't touch the face. The face had to remain completely feminine. So that we finally had sorted out, and everyone was okay with that. So we started playing with the areas around the hair and starting to turn the hair into something that was a bit more alien. So the idea of some of the lines cut like a sea creature in some ways. The idea of gills, introducing gills to the, if you're going to have gills, do you still have hair? Some of it here we were playing with the idea of tentacles and spikes, and there's the danger of getting too Star Wars. But I think in the end we sorted on the girl in the bottom left, and that just sort of seemed to really appeal to everyone. It was something that was alien. The silhouette was distinct and actually pretty cool in a way. You've got that flare in the back of the head, so it creates a nice shape, and there's actually some appeal there. This was the first drawing that everyone really saw of the Asari that told us, like, okay, I think we might actually do this. We might actually design this, and she might work. This was still a little bit overly based on some of the underwater elements, sort of the idea of gills and slits of the neck, the idea of kind of the tentacle idea. How shiny is she? How isn't? I mean, even the fact that she's blue, kind of a nod to the old Star Trek, Captain Kirk, blue space babes or green space babes kind of thing. But it definitely, once we switched to blue, it really helped explain more about where she came from, where she's associated with. This was further development once we had agreed on a direction. It was just a matter of refinement. So we took one of the actresses that we had settled on and decided to paint some of the Asari features over her. So if she can recognize herself in this, then bravo, and I'm sorry for putting gills on you. So here's a little overly shiny in some places, but it was fun trying to sort of figure out the backstory behind the physiology of this. Like, how would this evolve? How would this have come about? And again, going to sort of, we kept almost like a sort of aquatic, as though they came from a world that was very wet, very, and they spent maybe most of their time in fluid, in liquid, and then eventually, decided to get out and move in space, but probably still enjoy a good swim every now and then. Now, this costume is painted on a human female, but was designed originally as an Asari costume. It was something that was supposed to be. This is actually the sexy space nun costume, trying to do something that was appealing, but without being overly cheesy in a way, I guess. There's just a tendency with video game costume designs, to just show as much cleavage as possible, to just, oh hey, thigh-high boots, instant sexy, okay, great, yeah, and show as much midriff as you can. So this is kind of an attempt to create something that was a little different, that's still obviously, fairly sexualized, but in a way that, I don't know, that's different, that hopefully people haven't seen too much of in games before. This was just some Asari costume variation, just trying to figure out sort of what are these girls going to wear, what are they going to walk around in, and this costume is sort of meant to tie into their sort of sea or ocean underwater kind of roots, just to give the impression that these girls are very delicate and beautiful in a way, but in a way that is like, they remember the water. What space babe is complete without straps? Trying to design a dress with as much straps as possible. Again, just trying to come up with something a little elegant, maybe even a little like a priestess kind of thing. Designing the Asari military costume, now this wasn't something that ever ended up making it into the game, but the development of it was fun, and it helped us really understand a little bit more about who these girls are and what they're trying to do. So in painting this, we tried to make them very lithe, very elegant, and the idea that as the ranks increase, as we go from the left to the middle to the right, certain aspects of them are emphasized. The idea that once one of them reaches an upper rank, they flare out at the shoulders. She's got those thigh and shin flares as well, and it was just a desire to try to create something that changed the silhouette in ways that maybe we haven't seen quite as much. So whereas with human military stuff, you just get a taller hat. Here we were trying to give it a bit more shoulder, and even give her heels, just to say, like, what are these girls trying to emphasize? So this was based on partially wetsuits, partially climbing gear, and little touches of military flair here and I had sort of figured out a direction to explore with this Asari military costume. Just wanted to see it a little bit more in context, so it kind of helps to see her doing something a little more interesting. So we've got, again, more of the wetsuit ideas, trying to maybe cut holes in the suit, reveal some of the blue Asari skin in areas that maybe you wouldn't expect. So there you have it. My favorite element of this actually is her thigh and knee flares. That one piece I was actually very proud of, and I think, yeah, if it didn't end up getting used in Mass Effect, I think I might try to use that later on. This is our Asari Commando. These are the really dangerous Asaris. We were trying to come up with something that was intimidating, but still made sure that you knew this is still a sexy space babe. So a lot of copper sort of looking elements to it. Again, lots of buckles and straps and all of that. It's kind of become a cheesy expected game language, but it's just so effective that you almost can't avoid it sometimes. Sometimes you just get tired. You've painted about 50 different versions of something, and eventually you just need to do something ridiculous. So I had just heard about the idea of biotics, and I thought, well, hey, Asari using biotics, wonder how that would work. And so this sort of thing will just happen when you get exhausted. But she's got some pretty powerful abilities there. And this poor alien, I wish this alien made it into the game actually, but unfortunately I didn't. Well, obviously his head was blown off, so he wasn't a complete design. We couldn't actually get him in. As the further we designed this, the writers were figuring what they wanted to do out more, and design was figuring itself out, and just understanding that the Asari were going to be the extensive biotic users and just how powerful they were going to be. So this was just an attempt to sort of illustrate an Asari in her badass mode. And the idea of a shocking red outfit was something that I almost wish was carried into the final. But again, who knows? Maybe this will be a Mass 2 or 3 sort of outfit. This was one of a long series in trying to discover and figure out who this matriarch character was going to be. This one, of all of them, is probably one of the most strange mixes of elements. The more I painted, every layer I would add a new element to it, or take away an element. And at this point, it was sort of an interjection or an intersection between two directions. One was the black leather and strap bodysuit, and then the other one was sort of the Holy Mother coat, in a way, trying to even go with colors that suggested someone very pure, very very righteous. Buckled up at the collar, as any prudent nun in training might wear, but split right across the chest and then flowing in the back. So it's definitely an interesting mix. After painting again about 30 or 40 different variations on this character, it's easy to lose sight of what you're trying to do. So sometimes you just take your favorite so far and try to put it in context. So I tried to give her a bit of a pose, and also in some ways figure out what biotics might be. This was a very simple kind of solution, some sort of shield or the beginning of some sort of blast. But I did like the idea of a red coat or a red hood, something that the interior would be red. The interior had this like fierce, passion, this almost like the danger symbol of blood and excitement, but it's all shrouded in white. This was one of those designs that was kind of there that people had sort of liked. It was a mix of elements that people had picked out. Casey and Derek had liked certain parts, so trying to consolidate them, make sure they all fit together in one design. I wasn't totally sold on this though, and in the end we ended up going back and trying a couple extra things. It was actually, this formed a good base, and it was kind of there, but it was just the elements had to be arranged in a different way. Now this is the same matriarch design, just with a few elements changed, and mostly just arranged in a way that made her a little bit sharper, a little bit more intimidating, and also changed the colors away from a giant purple dress into sort of the black and darker colors that you see here. We also went through a lot of different designs trying to come up with a good priestess hood for her, something that was intimidating and that let you know that, hey, this is someone you do not mess with. So I think she turned out really well. So as a new concept artist, first job ever, showing up at this company.
Alright, sorry about that. Just I guess it doesn't play all the things, it just plays all the specific like picture thing or whatever, so it goes straight and reparts again. So after that, so yeah, the Asari I definitely like the design of the Asari, as the guy said, space babes. Yeah, they did kind of remind me of Star Trek, the kind of the whole concept of them. But I like the idea behind the Asari. I mean, not just the all-female race, but just the look of them. Kind of reminds me of the either Twi'leks or Tantillions, I think they're called from Star Wars. One of the Jedi Masters in Star Wars Episode 2 was like that. I forgot what his name though was off the top of my head. He became more popular in the cartoons because he got a lot more screen time than like 5 seconds or whatever. So yeah, it's always interesting hearing the authors or artists talk about their work. So anyway, let's go over the random creatures of the game.
In the early development of the creatures and a lot of the stuff that you'd find, the aliens, not necessarily dangerous aliens, it's just sort of the fauna and the biology that you'd encounter in the galaxy. We just played with, really, again, as many different shapes as we possibly could find. Just, trying to come up with stuff that really stretches the imagination. Just because you watch any documentary about animals and you'll find stuff that's just absolutely mind-blowing. So in a lot of ways it gives you a lot of room because, there's probably something fairly similar to this to begin with. This is the gas bag creature, alien. He's kind of a floating man of war in a way. So based on the Portuguese man of war, again, you really don't need to stretch too far. So this guy's a Portuguese man of war mixed with a mosquito, with a couple of little foraging hands instead of a big needle. And here's just a color treatment over the gas bag creature. This was pretty much all you needed. It was like, all right, it's got the thin membrane. He's got the green skin, kind of sickly. It's just, it's one of those creatures that you just don't want to touch. You wouldn't want it touching you. This is another experiment in just shape, just trying to see what kind of stuff we can get away with. I like the idea of something with a hard, dusty, dark, maybe even stained shell, but that had like a real inner glow to it, something that had almost like these little lights that would walk around, kind of like a glow bug, but more dangerous. One of the tricky things in video games is always like very thin-legged creatures, and also this just didn't really have the right look to it. This might be better suited for a dungeon somewhere. Okay, again here, playing with shapes, there were a few different creatures that were drawn based on this shape, just with different surface treatments. This is kind of the insectoid one. Playing with different textures and trying to see, again, in the end, technical restraints are something you have to consider, but at this early stage, the idea of transparent sacks filled with goo that you could shoot, or the shiny carapace that fades off and gets stained and dirty in some parts, but is really shiny in others. So again, just toying around, seeing what we could actually get away with. For the next one here, the spike hound. This is sort of, I was wanting to create sort of a four-legged creature, but there was kind of an insect, kind of a grub. This still, you'll notice sort of the worm neck mouth, the separated jaw. That's kind of a feature that you'll find in a lot of deep sea creatures, but trying to just tack it on there to make you question, like, okay, well, he's shaped like this, so he must eat in a way that's terrifying. Don't touch me. But again, technical restrictions, the transparent body, something difficult to toy with, and then also, again, the thin structure wasn't really, and plus too, this guy's just a little heavy metal for what we were going for. The sketching just pencil and paper is always a blast, and here we have the worm neck sketch, and this was drawn over one of the silhouettes that Sung Kim had painted up early on. We liked the shape, but it was kind of a matter of figuring out how do we articulate all the details on the shape? How does this shape become an actual creature, an actual object with a biology to it? So here we were pulling out different elements that had been in some of our early creature designs. We've got sort of the separated jaw with the long neck with vertebrae sticking out of the body. And again, the four-legged creatures are pretty popular in this environment. And here's the worm neck in color. Not too much experimentation needed to be done at this point. It was just, he sort of made sense. The carapace, the grub-like neck, making it white really made it sickly. And that was something that seemed pretty important to making this guy as menacing as possible. And here's the final worm neck. This is a different wing configuration than the previous one. Something a little bit smaller. this guy, we ended up scaling up quite a bit, and so by making the wings a little bit smaller and giving him more of them, it was sort of supporting the idea that kind of like a grasshopper, he's not meant to fly around. They're more of this flood, he'll use his wings to support him as he leaps at you and then controls his fall.
These are just 4 head studies for the Maw. This is one of the vehicle enemies we decided to put in the game. He was going to be pretty well only on Uncharted worlds. He was a large creature. He would come out of the ground, almost like the worm in Dune. So these are just looking at how the head would come up and then animate the mouth open. So this is the Maw. This is a pencil drawing of how some of his arms would look. We had a nice shape on there. We ended up making the front arms quite a bit bigger, but this shows how the main body and the head would look at an early stage. This is a color study of the Maw. We didn't do too many. We actually pretty well picked the only one that was done. And the cool thing about this one is it had this glowing tongue. It was almost like a deep sea creature. We were wondering maybe with some of the Uncharted worlds being quite dark, this would make it show up a bit better. This is just a study of how the back would look on the Maw. We had these glowing panels on the back, again, like a deep sea creature. We were kind of playing around with the idea that the Uncharted worlds would be extremely dark, like in the movie Alien when they land on that world, it's just blowing snow, pitch black, the lights of the vehicle. But as we started to really work with the Uncharted worlds more, we needed more variety. So we ended up losing the lights on the back and just keeping the ones on the tongue. This is a study, not only did the Maw come out of the ground, but it also had these small tentacles that would pop up around it and then would attack the vehicle. This is just a drawing to show the animators how these would work. The designers always want animate creatures, ambient creatures. This kind of gives a bit of life to the level. These were some quick pencil drawings of what a beetle might look like. It's also good at the beginning of the game to build a few of these. The character modelers were getting good at normal mapping, gives something to the animators to test putting these in the level. Ambient creatures usually are the first things to get cut as the game gets closer to the end, though. Usually people would rather have more enemies to fight than just a small beetle running around the level. This is a beetle drawn up. This is the final design, just colored up. We ended up building this. We placed in a few levels. This probably will show up in a few of the Uncharted worlds. This is a concept for the Baron. This is like our space hound. We're going to have him in Warworld and a few other areas. It kind of had some dreadlock type bone structures on the front there. It was a bit crazy. This is the final drawing for the Baron. Not much different than this in a dog. It was actually drawn over a dog. The thing that made it interesting was the larger teeth, but we put these large eyes on it, almost like a deep sea fish eye. That gave it a really interesting look. And then the texturing was going to be more of a kind of a silver color. This is the final color version of it with the large eye. We wanted this kind of interesting kind of scales on it, like fish scales on it, just to kind of make the dog look a little bit different. Plus, it's also a nightmare to do hair on video games.
Well, that was pretty interesting. The just seeing all the creatures and how the Baron were made. I kind of wish they kept with the dreadlock dog or whatever. That would be pretty cool, but might have been a bit over the top in a game like this. But anyway, let's see what the Elcor have to offer.
Well, here we're looking at the Elcor, and the Elcor is one of those ones I think I had the most fun with. Just in sketching things, I was trying to think of not only what the creature design would look like from a biological standpoint, but this is a video game, and there are certain things that you face in video games that you don't get in movies or comic books or anything like that. And one of the ideas that I was toying with was the idea of having a creature that was passive. He's not your enemy, but at the same time, if you put him in a crowd, he's kind of an obstacle. They're big, they're peaceful, but they're a bit of a nuisance just by their sheer size and slowness. So this was a quick sketch trying to think of here's a lumbering mechanic creature who just you see them in a crowd, and they're these big giant monolithic living boulders that are going to get in your way eventually. And here's one of those things where you get inspired by stuff that you see and you don't even realize it until you've drawn it. This is kind of a modification of, if you guys have seen the Dune movie, and since we're all nerds, I know we have, of the Baron Harkonnen from that beautiful David Lynch classic. So he's got these multiple eyes down the side of his head, the big collar, the fat body on the thin arms. It amounted almost too much of it amounted to too much of a jester fetishist kind of thing. And again, sometimes you just know when things don't suit the IP you're trying to build. Now, this is one of those things that just comes out of spending a whole day concepting creatures for too long. Just where can you put things? I mean, if you give the viewer some anomaly, some strange biology, something that he's faced with, and he has to rationalize it himself, and it's fun to toy with that, because you're like, why is his face down there? Why is it down there? And you may never know, and we all have a great laugh about it. And yeah, there you go. The Cthulhu or Dungeons and Dragons fans will enjoy this. This is really just, I mean, simple premise, just put an octopus on a man's head and it's scary. There you go. Suddenly it works. Okay, and it's this guy, I actually kind of wish he was in there, because there's something terrible about being faced to engage in a normal conversation with something like this. And here's the big giant boulder version of this guy, just colored up a little bit, putting literal rock texture on his skin, the big plate bones on his face that actually came from a couple other different creatures combined onto this. Again, it's a shame somebody like this didn't quite make it in the game, but I mean, I'm happy with how the final turned out. This was just a night spent doodling some creature designs. You'll notice some of the little sketches actually end up getting translated into finals, but this is really just toying with the shape of these guys, seeing how far they can be pushed, what makes sense, what's almost too much to believe. Alien design is like that. It's you kind of push your own imagination a little farther and then try to hop over that line, and then hopefully you find something that works. Now there in the bottom right was the sketch. That direction I really liked, and so you'll see some further development there. Top left is the beginning of the octopus head. It's actually amazing, this sketching process, just doing these little doodles here on the napkin, how much stuff you can actually get. It can take you really far. So it's something that I hope I continue to do. And here's one of those drawings that you don't know is a big deal until you've taken the creature to final. This is pretty much as close as you could get. It was just a matter of developing this direction a little further. We have the painted version of the napkin sketch. So this is our Elcor, minus a few changes to the face. There was, again, once you see a face like that, you expect it to be animated, and so there was the suggestion that you take away its mouth so that you're not disappointed when it doesn't move. It was, again, just some of the technical constraints, the memory, and just the sheer amount of time to animate a whole new face.
Huh, interesting. I kind of wish we kept the Baron Carcon and Elcor, or the Cthulian, or what he was talking about D&D wise. He was mentioning the Mind Flayers or Illithid, depending on which version you're playing. That would have been interesting. Too bad they never had a creature like that in the game. They kind of sort of use that for the Primo Prothean statues or whatever. Maybe that's what he doesn't talk about, but I wonder if that's where they moved the concept to or something like that. But anyway, let's look at our favorite AI gone rogue Geth.
This was one of the sketches that were a turning point for the development of the Geth. We were looking at what would be really freaky, what's going to really get visceral and start scaring the player, and something that has a really deep impact. And I was thinking about the idea of a muscle chart, and sort of like this exposed, skinless character. And if it was an android, you could do that. You could have this robotic, synthetic body that runs around and jumps, and would obviously totally freak me out. This was really one of the sketches. It got kind of passed around the office, and everyone sort of agreed, yeah, this is a pretty cool direction. At the time, the Geth were actually just another alien species, but this was originally just a droid, just a straight up droid, and then it just got placed into the Geth location. So this set us off on a fun path. He's sort of clasping to the wall like Spider-Man, just looking around. You just still kind of creeps me out, actually. This next Geth here, this was more development once everyone sort of really dug the plastic muscle idea. And I wanted to make it look really artificial, really dead, kind of formaldehyde-ish sort of white muscle fiber stuff. I was also kind of toying with the idea of, take Bishop from Aliens, where he's bleeding milk,
and just skin Bishop so that he's just running around like that, and then give him a weird face. And so all of this stuff, we're just playing with ideas, again, trying to come up with something that really plays into this emotional, sick response. Again, here we're just exploring the plastic muscle structure. Here he's got some glowing lights on the inside of his body, and it's a human skull face missing the bottom jaw. Took a few elements from this, but one of the things was that, these guys aren't human. They didn't come from humans. They're not trying to be humans. So all these tiny little tweaks, like some stuff you take, some stuff you leave behind. Now this drawing was a combination of a lot of different elements that we had gone through working on. Here, again, you see the muscle system. He's bleeding the white milk there. He's got the hood with the single eye, and the shape of the hands, tubes wrapped around him. This was a concept that was sitting around for a while, and didn't end up being the final, but it was just so good. We ended up building a whole creature skeleton for him, and actually got him in the game. So he's the hopper, and he runs around, and you actually face him. This was one of a series of very early sketches where we were trying to make sure that the Geth fit onto a human skeleton. So this was actually one of the quick process doodles where we took the human model and then started painting Geth appliances over top of them. So putting the hood on and bending the legs out, trying to make sure that all the joints line up. Again, all these funny little things that you end up doing in production art. Here's a lighter version of the Geth, kind of stripped down, but this model sheet, we're just trying to explore where the tubes go, where the armor goes, what color things are, where the shapes of the feet and hands, the whole 9 yards. This is what the model builders end up taking. You can see a little separated leg there, spewing blood, white blood. And this head was one of the first that sort of got discussed when talking about the Geth as an alien race. There's this idea that, yeah, really, they would be everything that the Geth are except just creatures. This was designed before the android direction got picked up. This guy's based on a bat. He's got the big flared out nostrils and pointy, horrible little teeth. And the idea of kind of a short-haired surface, like a short-haired body, was kind of interesting. Here's a colored version of the alien race Geth very early on, just playing with materials and trying to figure out, we've got the short hair, and then he's got this kind of almost like seal skin covering or armor, natural armor growing on him. It's just interesting. This was a strange one, and it's funny what directions you'll end up going when trying to find the right path. Here is a concept for the Geth that Derek ended up doing. This is sort of a creature that comprised mostly of tubes and piping, and this was actually a really strong direction that we ended up using a lot of the elements from this, where because he's composed of pipes, he ends up looking mechanical, but also not necessarily organic, but just a different kind of machinery than most. Also, we've got the multiple eyes on the face, just trying to sort of dehumanize the figure. Here's some sketches of the Geth that Derek had done, trying to, again, break up the human face, just putting a shape where the head should be that's so alien and so bizarre that you sort of get an instant rejection feeling when you look at it, just that you're repulsed by it. So like guns shooting out of the nose, or tubes shooting out where a mouth should be, and just splitting it up into fragments. A lot of elements from these got carried onto the final. These are some other sketches that Sung Kim ended up doing. Really cool. Again, just early exploration of the android concept. You can see the bits of the piping and trying to change the shape of the head, trying to alien him up a little bit. I really like this. This is kind of like a mercenary android. And here is another sketch by Sung. Just again, here he's trying to break up the shapes and stick with the skeleton, but really try to pull this as far as it can go. The hole in the chest there is one of my favorite elements, and we tried to keep some negative space in the creature in some ways, but it's little elements like that I really enjoy. And here's another Sung Kim. Just it's an interesting shape in the chest here, just sort of playing with the arcs and the curves, and trying to see what sort of lines you can create with the form while still staying true to the skeleton. I really like the upper thigh there, how it's sort of like a hollowed out section. Sort of implying that there was material there, but now it's been removed. This is a sketch that Casey did for the Geth at another earlier stage. We had the hood, this, and the actual face on this one ended up basically being exactly the final for the Geth. he had the glowing blue light there, the hood with the flaps, kind of the eye recesses up in the top of the head. But this was one of those things. You'll actually notice that the legs on this guy are what got translated into the Geth armature. Here's a combination of a lot of different elements. You can see the neon, or the fiber optic muscles, the hood on the right from Casey's drawing, one of Sun Kim's heads on the left. Following the shape of one of Derek's drawings, this was like a combination of at least 4 different artists, all their conceptions and ideas in it. And the thing on the right ended up kind of working. Everyone's like, okay, all right, let's explore that a little further. Here we took one of the combinations of elements and then started making even more mixes and variations on that. The guy on the left here, he's got the crazy feet built out of tubes. He's got the armor built onto him, very, very, very stark, the black tubes and dark gray armor. And then we tried some different stuff with almost sort of like a dolphin skin armor, sort of like the texture of something that's been grown. And again, just trying to push it, trying to see where this could head. And I mean, one of the things we were finding was that because he was standing still in sort of a neutral pose, it was difficult to get the feel for him. So we tried posing out a few of these guys in some more threatening and menacing positions, and we were able to get a much better view of him. Here is the Geth Trooper. This guy is he's got his armor on. Everyone was sort of agreed on the location of things. He's got these big tubes in the back. Those actually ended up going, but for the most part, you see the arched neck, the protruding sort of pigeon chest, all of these little features that made it through. And this is the final, once he got it all refined. So, cut up the armor a little bit in different places. You'll see that head that Casey had designed very early on made it through to the final. He's got all his tubes and pipes and ready to run around in Mass Effect and scare the crap out of you.
Yeah, scare the crap. Well, the hoppers definitely surprised me when I first played. Didn't expect them. They fly now? Oh god, I can't believe they made that reference. Well, they didn't fly. Anyway, I'm glad they kept with the robot motif, because I don't know, it was kind of cool to see the organic version of them, but I'm glad we stuck with the. It's kind of weird when it comes to artist designs. A lot of times I'll like concept art designs more than the final design, depending on what I'm looking at. But I understand for either programming purposes or flowing with the world or whatever that they keep that style. But yeah, this is one of the few times I think the final design works for it. So anyway, let's see our lovely. Next, let's see our lovely squid polite race of the Hanar.
When designing aliens, is trying to find shapes that no one's seen before, but that they'll still believe and they'll still be able to connect to. It's this big void, and the only way to fill it is to really just fill it with stuff. You'll never know where you're going until you've thrown something down in front of yourself and seen if it works. So this is a way of very quickly sorting out just some thoughts on the subject, sort of figuring out directions that you would never choose with your intelligent mind, but if you just quickly throw it down in black and white, quick silhouettes, then you'll do stuff that you wouldn't have realized otherwise. Here's one of the guys taken from the silhouettes. He's still wearing sort of the modified spacesuit, and that was actually kind of fun. Is the spacesuits, by putting them on the aliens, it sort of connected them all in this galactic market, in this galactic economy. So that you build a spacesuit for people, and then you have to build it for Turians, you have to build it for the weird and wacky ones, and it was a fun way of trying to make them a little bit more believable. Now this mystical little spiderwick guy, he was fun, but he didn't quite suit. And again, the narrow limbs are difficult to pull off well visually. They don't read that well on the screen as it is now. And this, again, it's a little too fairy tale, a little too mystical. This little creature was also fun. It's just the simple idea of too many limbs. What did too many limbs look like? And it ended up being this. I kind of like the no mouth, head pulled back kind of, the pointy hat head. The little legs in the front, actually, the tiny set of legs, I really like how those work. That might be fun to use later on. Now, this guy I always liked, and I'm again kind of sad that he didn't make it into the game. But an alien that was scary, that was intimidating, that was kind of frightening, but didn't really mean you any harm. And it was kind of the idea of the scholar, sort of a scholarly, almost like mystical librarian alien. So here we've got, the tinges of blue. He kind of looks like a mortician or an undertaker. And this is another example of where ideas can come from crazy, weird situations. I was just flipping through a video game magazine, and I saw the Mass Effect article, and I thought, oh great, this is cool. I haven't seen, actual paintings in an actual magazine before. And I saw this one early illustration, and way in the distance, way off in the background, was this tiny blob of a sketch of a guy, and I was like, that's the guy. That's a guy that I want to draw. So I came back to work the next day and blew up the illustration and realized, like, there is no information here. So just started painting directly over the very low res image and just tried a few different options. This guy was, he had the red robe and the thin arms, the big tall head, and it was actually a really fun way of going about it. So this is sort of our duck or platypus webbed priest. When concepting creatures, one of the things that it's always good to keep in mind is the concept, that it's all about the idea. And when you're out of stuff to draw, if you just start playing with the ideas, you'll quickly find stuff. And one was, what if there were aliens that were so ugly, that were so unapproachable, that they had to find ways, if they wanted to move and work in this new galactic economy, that they had to modify themselves. They had to find some way of, like, almost hiding themselves or blanketing themselves and relate to people on a new level. So here we have the beast with the big giant gaping mouth, but he's trying desperately to cover up this ugly form with this tiny little inadequate hood with a little holographic face projection. So this was a fun direction, and again, something to keep in mind for later maybe. Here again is the same idea of a creature that's so alien that they have to find some way of finding a middle ground. Rather than being ugly, this is just almost incomprehensible. It's a creature that you don't know what to look at when you're talking to it. Am I looking at an inappropriate place, or am I looking at his foot, or I don't know. So the idea of building a custom face, a face where there is no face, I really enjoyed. And this ended up striking a chord with everyone. This is something that, is still foreign, but in some senses it just, it's got this ethereal glow. It's different, but it's appealing. And when you look at it, it's like you just sit and watch it while it talks, and it doesn't matter what he says because it's pretty. The technical leap of getting from this illustration to the final was a difficult one, but I think still the hand art turned out to be a fairly magical break in the galactic crowds.
They're almost like a joke race when you think about it, not because that they themselves are jokes, but just because, like, what happens in the background, like, there's jokes about them in the second game and third game, just like around the race, not the race themselves being funny. But I always remember as the big stupid jellyfish, so. All right, and obviously on to ourselves and the humans, how the humans look in Mass Effect.
In the very early days of the Mass Effect universe, one of the big questions was, we need space armor. If we're going to have a space adventure, we need space armor. We need stuff to collect, stuff to look cool. So this is one of the very first drawings, actually, of armor that I did when I joined the project. It's still got some stuff that I liked. Some of this translated to the final, but again, just toying around, just seeing what's possible. Because again, if you're building this universe from the ground up, every question is unanswered, so might as well try something. I still actually really like this guy's helmet, and I think in a lot of ways that helmet look ended up translating fairly close to some of the final designs. Not quite. This is still pretty simple, but yeah, it's funny what sticks and what doesn't. This is a slightly cleaned up female version of the armor. Again, because all armor have to be, on men and women, it's always good to see what it looks like both ways. And you find differences when translating it. This I still kind of like. It was still really trying to hold true to sort of the 80s classics that we were kind of thinking about in those early days. Now here's a different direction, trying to come up with just different looks, different feels. Again, trying to stick to sort of the 80s palette, tan and white, and certain things just scream certain time periods, and that was what we were sticking with. And then you see one of Derek's sketches of a helmet in the background there between the two heads, and trying to articulate it in a way, how do we build this? What does it look like from different angles? And that translation process always gives you something different. So that's something that we like to do. Oh, yikes, looking at these drawings is always fun. The very, very early stuff. This was when thinking about environment for very, very hazardous places. Armor that almost looks as dangerous as the environments you might have to go into. So the big heavy pipes, the copper wiring, this is ultra industrial, and in some ways this informed some of our later industrial clothing. Now here again, just trying to put the armor in a little bit of context with, like, the glowy Tron lines and the screen on the helmet and all of that, and just toying with different styles, different looks. Again, this is sort of the armor plating looks, and in some ways, it works. Some things don't work, but you don't know until you draw it. Now here we have the female armor, and this is this is the closest. Well, no, this is it. This is it's funny. You just sort of draw it and it works, and everyone agrees, and it works. The white and red was always a favorite of mine. I'm still glad that's in there. It's that was originally how it was designed to be, the white and red, but in so many ways as an iconic piece of armor, there's already the Stormtrooper white armor. There's so many different precedences that need to be respected. So yeah, I like how this turned out. Now here's the iconic shot. This is the armor with the one red and white, the red and white stripes, the N7 logo, a little darker, a little more intimidating. Here we have the human male medium armor. This is, again, we started with the lowest layer and then built it up in pieces. So added a little bit more to the shoulders, a little bit more thickness to the legs and all of that. It was a good process. Trying to think of how this stuff would work in the battlefield, what the requirements would be. And again, this is so far in the future that, who knows what technological advances they've made. So one of the things we tried to do is keep it fairly close to the body, tighter than, let's say, what ended up being a Gears of War style of look. This is, the efficient, sleek sort of look. Crowd characters were always fun. Trying to design the look of the street, this is the galactic economy right here. It's like, what do people buy? What do people think looks good? It really, it's a chance to use some old traditions, use things that we still think is attractive now, and then really just give them that extra twist that says, like, hey, who knows, you might like this stuff. People a few hundred years ago, if they saw what you're wearing now, like, they'd probably think it was ridiculous. So why not give you that same experience? Here we have sort of the Han Solo-ish mercenary kind of outfit. Again, just trying to think of, there are certain things that are just practical. Some things people have been wearing for 500 years and 1,000 years, and they're still wearing them. Shirts, pants, straps, awesome. He's even got his little space boots, and it's just one of those things where how much is too much, how much is too close to modern, and again, you don't know it until you've drawn it. This is one of my favorites, actually. This is, of all things, this sketch is one of the best. I was watching Outland with Sean Connery, and one of the mercenaries, and this is out in space when there's a mining station on Pluto. One of the mercenaries is wearing one of those big puffy orange vests, and I just thought, that is hilarious. That is 80s science fiction right there. So I tried to fight for the orange vest as much as possible, and it did actually end up getting in the game, though not like this. So yeah, fight for what you believe in. Here we're just trying out some more ridiculous future costumes. Some of these got a little Fifth Element, which is good because they did an amazing work on that. Jean-Paul Gaultier did most of the designs on there, and it just gives the future a very fashionist, frightening sort of appeal. We had a medical suit on the left here, something orange and flashy, and then this is kind of a space vampire costume for the space goths. Some mechanic outfits for future mechanics. Just trying to ask the questions of, like, what do they need to do? What are the requirements of their space station mechanical requirements? So sleeves and guards, all the protection and equipment that might be necessary. This was a costume I really liked. This was actually sort of based on one of the couches that Sid Mead designed, I think. Kind of some of his look, the look of it was Neo-Tokyo kind of thing. This is something that you'd expect either a sophisticated woman of the future, maybe a business lady, or even something almost more evening wear might wear in the future. Here we had the hazard gear, just for the people working in very hazardous conditions. I really enjoyed how the helmet on this ended up turning out. It's very ant-like, so that when you see these people walking around, it's, you know, you get that sort of insect impression right away. And here we have one of the favorite costumes of the Mass Effect experience. This is sort of the dress with a few areas exposed that are, you know, in 200 years maybe that'll be the norm. I love the texture on the shirt, the sort of the copper sheet, flexible copper, and then with the rough material on the dress, I thought it made a good contrast. And here's the full spectrum of medical officers, right from the head of the emergency department, all the way down to some of the nitty-gritty field commando medics. You know, I love the idea of the black hood with just the face exposed. That's just cheesy enough to work. The guys on the left ended up being closer to what we went with, and the simple shape lended itself well to a lot of material variations, and we were able to get a lot of play from that. Designing military uniforms from the future is kind of an interesting design lesson. It's one of those things where you can't go too far away from what exists now before it becomes almost unrecognizable. So what we found was by sticking very close to what exists, but just making a few changes, a few shapes, that we were able to still get the same read, get the proper read from the player, but, you know, still make them up for ourselves. This is just an array of female military costumes, just to see what would be appropriate, what's too far, what is not nearly far enough. And here again, just simple utilitarian, trying to think, you know, what new things are people going to try in the future when it comes to their fashion. So we've got the black elements added on top, straps to connect the jacket together, connecting the jacket to the sort of chaps there. And again, this is a really fun experience, and it's fun to paint over the human form and try to come up with new shapes. And this is one of my personal favorite costumes, just because it's so dramatic. You get the black cloak with the one red the red slash on the front, and, you know, red on the back. And I actually like the final because the red, I believe, goes all the way to the floor, so it's even more dramatic. But, you know, trying to think of human dignitaries and the people who are in positions of power in the future, and again, trying to explain what they think of as being, you know, important, imperial. Who are the decision makers? All right, now that orange vest that I loved, this was again trying to reintroduce it, make sure that he didn't get left by the wayside. So this is one of those sketches where here we have some of the underlings, or the less than opulent, the less than wealthy in the future, and there's just something about that vest that just says, yes, I live on a space station. Now, these are some early just tests and experiments for some of our characters. This was, what's the name of?
This is
Anderson, yeah. And so, you know, just in listening to some of the voices that we knew, or some of the voice acting that we had gotten in, and trying to come up with a look that reflected that voice, that reflected that character. This is just, you know, helps in searching for the actors that we know we're going to choose, or trying to find those facial features that really help sell a character. These are some of the Ashley sketches, and, you know, taking some of the features from different actresses that we all agreed that had the right look, and some of them combining a few of them. And this is really just a lot of it trying to find what mix of elements is necessary to sell a particular character. These are some cadence shots, and it was so much of this is about the mood too, and what expression is he going to give. There's some expressions will, you know, a lifetime of keeping a certain expression on your face is definitely going to change your face, and that'll tell a lot about someone. You know, laugh lines, worry lines, the whole shebang, and then even hairstyles. So again, trying to figure out, like, who is this guy? What is he about? Now, this was an early model's face that we were using as our lead, as our Commander Shepard. Just, you know, testing it out, putting him on the armor, seeing, like, does this actually work? Does he have the right look? How does it fit? We changed the expression a little bit. There's a whole series of these where we, you know, painted scars on him and beards and shit, gave him different haircuts and stuff like that. But this went through so many different eyes, and everyone sort of was able to have a look. And at one point, this guy, we thought was pretty good. This was probably going to be our Shepard. After testing out all sorts of different faces, Mark Vanderloo's face ended up being one that everyone could agree on. That this is a face that we can explore the galaxy with. So drew him up, tested it out, and now that's Commander Shepard. You can see him in magazines every now and then and say, hey, he's got hair and he's Commander Shepard in a suit. But this being able to see it like this and go through so many different heads and faces just helped everyone really, rest assured that we had made the right choice.
Yeah, I think Mark's face definitely stood out from a lot of because a lot of games had those type of protagonists, and you had to do something different to make them stand out. And I think he did. I mean, yeah, I know a lot of protagonists kind of have the shaved short head because it's easier to program and not have to deal with long hair and have to deal with what comes with that. Nowadays, you could pretty much do whatever. Well, maybe not whatever, but a lot of stuff. But with Mark's face there, it definitely works. I almost kind of wish they, on some of the Ashley concept art, they kind of kept some of the short hair models. But I'm a sucker for the action-y girls with short hair, that type of stuff. But in the end, I'm still glad with what they went with. Just sometimes you like seeing kind of those options there. So anyway, let's see. Oh, we got quite a few. I'm going to have to split this up or make it one whole. I might just I was going to make the whole disc an episode, but I realized just how long it's going to take. So I think the art itself is just going to be one long thing, and then we'll kind of split it up into others. So anyway, let's see what the keepers have to offer.
Early on in the game, while we were still developing some of the levels, the look of some of the planets, the designers had a creature they had pretty well finalized. They were called the Keepers. They were the ones who took care of the Citadel. They were kind of like the janitors, the mechanics. They took care of the whole thing. So this was going to be an ambient creature that you would see throughout the level, and then they were going to play a pivotal part at the end of the game, which changed a bit to the final. So these are some early concepts of what that creature was going to look like. This is a character that was drawn up. A lot of these were just quickly drawn up in pencil, and then we were trying to decide actually how they looked, what the designers wanted from them, would they work with the story. So this was an early attempt. It just had some kind of interesting legs that would kind of balance it on the ground, multiple arms and limbs. This is another concept for the Keeper, and after we did a few, we started showing them to designers, and they started to tell us that actually the Keepers were supposed to be this very docile race, not menacing at all. They're almost like puppy dogs taking care of the base. So as you can tell, if you saw this guy taking care of the base, you'd want to blow his head off immediately with a shotgun. So we had to kind of incorporate that into some of the designs. So this one here was starting to get a bit less menacing. We were trying to figure out how many limbs. 4 arms we thought was a pretty good idea. Maybe the animators didn't think that was a good idea, but we thought it was kind of an interesting character. So one thing we kind of noticed with this was we needed a bigger head, maybe some larger eyes so you could actually have some feeling for it. This is starting to get closer to what we wanted. We were playing around with how the legs worked. So we wanted 4 legs, we wanted 4 arms, some bigger eyes. Probably something we needed was maybe a mouth, so it looked like it could communicate. Probably take some of the joints out of legs. There's just too many in here that kind of made it odd looking when it was balanced above his legs. This one here, we started to like the body. Maybe the legs were just too sharp the way the feet were working. I mean, he's running around the Citadel, it's all polished steel. It's gonna be sliding all over the place, and if he's not sliding, he'll be chipping the hell out of the surface, that's for sure. But the thing we kind of liked about this guy was he's actually reading this little ticket there, and I thought it was pretty cute. So drawing over the last design, we left the feet, kind of thickened them up a bit, start to work the head a bit more, thicken up the limbs, get more of a kind of a mouth in there, looking at a lot of insects, mosquitoes, bugs, praying mantis, those kind of things. Again, the designers were saying it was a bit menacing, especially with those sharp feet. And obviously this one here, I didn't listen to the designers because we still have the sharp feet. Again, just trying a different head on this one. That's about all I changed on this. So this one here was starting to get a lot closer. We left kind of like the sharper feet, but just added these toes on there, so it almost like softened it up as it walked along. Put larger eyes on it, give it a bit more feeling. Put this little vest on there, a little backpack that he could communicate with people. Little antenna, looks like he's cleaning. At this point we had the vest, but we ended up changing it to more of like a draped material on there. People were wondering how he zips that thing up, which makes sense. I don't know how he got that on either. So this is pretty well the final design for the Keeper. You can see that we've changed the vest a bit. It's more of like a draped vest over top of him. We've got the color, insect green. Why not? We've put those toes on there. The backpack, we just kind of cleaned up the design a bit, made it easier for the model to actually see what was going on in there. And this is one of the first creatures we built. We put him in the game, walking around, one of the first things the animators did, and he actually made it to the final game. It turned out really well.
Huh. You know, the Keepers, when they talk about it, makes them look like a school crossing guard, especially with the orange vest or whatever. But it's always interesting to see like the evolution of an idea and then being told like what the, because it sounded like they had the story, not for everything, but it looked like they had the story concept already for what the Creepers were. Just they needed something, you know, when he talks about how they need to be more docile and less intimidating. They kind of remind me of the Thri-Kreen from, except obviously not as dangerous, but the Thri-Kreen from Dungeons and Dragons. They were a race of insects similar to praying mantis. So I don't think you mentioned that, but yeah. Anyway, all right, on to the Krogan and see how they evolved.
So the Krogans, because we had these were our kind of our Klingons. These are the warlike beasts of the galaxy that everyone sort of tolerated. The violent family member that you don't really know if you should invite to the table or not. You don't know what they're gonna do. They're chaotic. So heading straight away, the designers will say something like they're space lizards, and right off the bat you'll take that fairly literally. So you kind of have to get that sort of thing out of the way. Here were some sketches of just some different, almost gorilla-like bodies. I don't even know who did these. Mike Spalding. Yeah, Mike Spalding did some awesome work for this. It just, that ape-like shape, that really imposing gargantuan form is something that definitely translated. Here we had a totally different direction. The face was mostly approved, and this was trying to come up with a body for it. This was before a lot was decided about who these guys were, and so this was kind of almost like a tribal approach to the subject. Like if these guys are warlike, it's kind of like almost a sub-Saharan Africa sort of way. And there you can see the big long organic dreadlocks hanging over. It's the hunched over version, and trying to punch holes through the anatomy, and there's kind of some interesting stuff in the development of this guy. Here's some really quick, simple stuff, just trying to take the face and go in almost like a classic Star Trek approach. So we have the big boots and wrapped up in the cone head. Didn't quite do the job. Here was just taking the face and sort of working a body around it. We like the idea of it having the shell with some almost exposed, softer tissue, but trying to find the right arrangement for it was interesting. This guy was a little too lumbering, a little too almost dopey, for lack of a better term. Putting the big hump on the back really helped to sell the idea of them being almost like slaves, in the sense of they've got this heavy burden on themselves, that they're slaves to their warlike natures, that they're slaves that their genetics don't allow them to overrun the universe. This really sort of worked with the head as well. The way that head was shaped, it almost needed to be squished underneath a big, huge back. The organic dreadlocks were still in place here, but this was actually starting to head in a direction we could all agree on. And here we have our naked Krogan. This was the body that got approved. Everyone was cool with it. A few arrangements. We shrunk the back down a little bit, made it so he could fit on a human skeleton, and there we go. We had him. Really like how this guy turned out. He's one of my personal favorite alien species in the game. Just the hard armor, the soft underbelly bits, the face just works. That big giant mouth is so intimidating. And here's the face of the Krogan. This is the look. A few changes, but not too many. These are our warlike creatures. Overlaid are a few textures just to sort of get the idea, and just being able to watch this guy talk is amazing. The amount of work done on that mouth was incredible, but it really paid off. And here's the Krogan armor. Putting armor on this guy was an interesting thing as well,
is again trying to fit them into the galactic economy, so that everyone, you could almost buy Krogan armor from the same guy who does human armor. What sort of requirements are there, in trying to fit something over that frame? It was a really great experiment in shape. The way the slats all work, it was really to emphasize the back, the big giant back with like the huge mass there, that curving down into the little tail, thick and intimidating. And also the idea of circles, using circles and curved shapes in this guy. He's intimidating enough as he is. He's so big, he's so imposing, and it's not like they're trying to be scary, they're just pushy. So curves really help to pull him into a realm that was believable and not laughable.
Huh. Well, I guess they weren't laughable with, especially if you fight Krogan battle masters and you're not paying attention with either psionics or biotics or having your inferno ammo ready to go. Wait. Anyway, but yeah, that's always, like I said, always interesting to see the evolution. Yeah, I mean, everyone knew that they were basically based off Klingons, just the warlike race. Every space story's got to have their warlike race of people. It's you gotta check that little notch right there. So let's see about our favorite traveling Romani style race now.
In the early development of the Quarian machines, all of the story stuff, before a lot of it was in place, or at least before a lot of it was known to me, there was a lot of sketching done on, what are these machines going to look like? What could these machine races be? And this was the idea of something that was mostly human, but was slowly starting to decay. Something that was like a robot that was once a person, but it's trying to become more of a robot again. So, putting almost like this naked cyborg, or this almost naked android in a human cloak that it's slowly rejecting by tearing it apart, was really, really interesting to me. Removing its face as well, like it almost changed its face or covered it up or torn it off, was great. And here's the idea of a Quarian that's once we had more of the story ideas in place, it was like that there were these aliens that wore spacesuits like skin, like a second skin, like they never took them off. They moved from derelict ship to derelict world, scavenging what they could, moving through the galaxy with no homeworld of their own, and trying to come up with a spacesuit that looked like it had been pieced together from found suits, from found objects, from their own materials, and that had also been worn like a skin. So the idea of putting clothing over top of the spacesuit, putting robes over top of the spacesuit, putting decorations over top of it, that became a theme that I did a lot of playing with. Here's another Quarian scavenger. This guy's a little darker, a little scarier. He's got the look of exposed ribs. He's a little more thin, but again, trying to keep that suit close to the skin as much as possible, keeping the breathing apparatuses really close. I like the idea of making the eyes bigger. Just the idea of a scavenging race. There's the idea of being able to see their eyes, of seeing the emotions play in that. You kind of pity their position a little bit more. Again, more scavenging Quarians. Here's something kind of back to the android, putting a coat on. When you've got a spacesuit and you put a coat on, that says something about your view of that spacesuit, that it's that much closer to you. And the idea of wrapping your cables around it and stuff poking holes through. These are themes that I'm glad we were able to explore. And here's the evolution of the Quarian from an interesting perspective. Each one of these images, each one of these sketches were drawn on top of the previous one. So just copy paste and then paint right over it, and try to respect it as little as possible, while still remaining true to it. Now this was just trying to find new shapes, new themes, until eventually it became a search for the Quarian shape. And this was brought on by the story idea that the Geth were created by the Quarians. And so trying to work backwards and say that we had mostly an idea for the Geth in place. We had agreed upon the sketch in the top left to a point, but there was still this Quarian question. So by trying to find new Geth designs, each the top row there is just trying to find what else could the Geth look like, what else could they be, and then
slowly it became a matter of like, okay, well, if the Quarian made them, then okay, we've got the legs with we've got the way their feet are made. There's a hood aspect, and so these carried on until once you got down to the bottom right, you had a creature that you could believe made the Geth, but that the Geth were a corruption of this shape. That the Geth were sort of the hide to Dr. Jekyll, or is it the other way around? Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, either way. So that you know, they tied together, and when you saw them and when you learned the truth, it was more of a aha, I knew it sort of moment, rather than a, oh, okay, I guess I'll buy it. And again, this is a technique that I've since used many times when trying to find a very difficult shape, trying to find a very difficult creature. So here we have our final batch of options that people got really excited about. In the end, it was the closest to the one on the left there. Just, you know, when tying them in back to the Quarian, to the Geth, I like the idea of there being a hood in place here. That the hood of the Quarian became this corrupted hood on the Geth, and that their face became smaller and their identity became less as this hood slowly became their head. Also, the hood, because of who this Quarian was, because we only knew there was going to be the one, and that she was going to be, at least to some degree, fairly innocent, almost in some ways motherly. There was the idea of sort of the Virgin Mary, that here's this almost innocent, virginal creature that you feel the need to look after, playing up on some very old, iconic images, but it works. And here we have, once we agreed on it, we paint up the back, try to get everyone's agreement. Like, you know, some stuff just doesn't work, some stuff is too much. Having the pipes sticking out of the arms and legs was a very difficult thing, so we would either end up pushing them closer towards the body or get rid of them altogether, find another solution. Finding a face for the Quarian was also an interesting thing, because it was a matter of how much do you show, how much technology is there here, and also trying to think in advance of how it would tie into the Geth. So here we have some double hoods, just some masks with technology around them. Again, I think the bottom left one is probably one of the eerier ones that is meant to tie into the Geth mouth or hood face. And here she is. Here's the final model sheet, and down right in the middle there you can see sort of a human girl face. I put that in just so that we could get the idea of how the inside of that mask might work, how it would relate to the face. But in terms of how much you actually see, well, not sure. But yeah, pulled the hood out a little bit farther, and yeah, put some color on her. I really like her in purple as well, because it's one of those colors you don't really expect.
Oh yeah, I like Tali. I forgot that you mentioned like the Virgin Mary. I didn't even think about that. I knew she was supposed to be kind of that like young character that all the characters kind of look after. Because if you look at some of the dialogue, and I don't even think I showed all the versions of Tali's dialogue. I think the only person that's really aggressive with her really is Garrus. All the other characters, which kind of funny seeing how the story can go. Well, I don't want to spoil anything, but all the other characters, if you hear their elevator dialogue, they usually all like kind of look after her. You know, like Ashley asks about her, Kaiden asks about her. I forgot what Liara's conversation is. I think it's more analytical when she talks to him. But yeah, most of the people kind of look after her because I assume she's supposed to be the youngest of the group out of everyone. You know, like I said, probably teenager. I almost kind of wish they went with that weird like weird goggle type of thing. That would have been cool. But and then yeah, the whole human face and the suit, just to kind of give an idea. Wouldn't that be terrible if that was basically what they did to show what Telly's face actually was, and nothing like alien or different? Anyway, let's look at the Rachni.
At the time that we were designing the Rachni, they were described as sort of a mix of the aliens from Alien and the creatures from the book Ender's Game. So they're kind of a nod to some old science fiction classics, things that have become very familiar to us. So we're basing them on insects, but trying to get a very distinctly alien silhouette. With Rachni development, we were just trying to explore pretty much everything as far as shape goes. Something abstract, something familiar, but really strange in its silhouette. So these were by Sean Smales. This is some of his early development stuff. These are some of the creatures that Sean Smales was developing. He was going really, really far with just trying to come up with new silhouettes. Again, more Sean Smales, just trying to come up with shapes, things that are very intimidating, multiple legs, multiple limbs, things that come out of left field, things that look very weaponish. Again, just Sean Smales trying to design just very intimidating, very alien-looking monsters. Again, another Smales. This one has the massive scythes and the quadruped sort of thing, and it's just, I mean, it's a mess of just spikes, so obviously something to be scared of. We got some help from another concept artist, Sung Kim. Now, the stuff that Sung is able to do with silhouettes is just awesome. He's got a lot of experience in monster and creature design, so when it comes to doing something new and fresh and different, he's definitely the man to talk to. And I think he was instrumental in opening this character up for us. He really gave us some new directions and things. And again, just a master of intimidating silhouettes. Again, just more exploration by Sung Kim, coming up with this awesome neck shape that ended up finding its way into another creature, actually. The Carnibug and the Rachni both sort of branched off of this one image. Neck ended up arching over for the Rachni, and then eventually we added a face and some wings to this, and we got two creatures out of it, so yay for us. Another variation on the theme. This is getting closer to our Rachni. He's got the massive spikes on his back, and he's sort of getting close to a shape that's interesting and alien, insect-like, but definitely eerie. Again, more Sung Kim. This one's got the massive pincher spike claws, getting almost lobsterish. But you know, this is all the stuff that we need to see it before we can decide not to go with it. But then, you know, in that way, you also end up finding stuff that is very useful. Now, this sort of thing would be great. We're still waiting for technology to catch up to us. If someday we can have a creature that you can see its vital organs and everything like that, it would be fantastic. And everyone was really excited when they first saw this. But we're still maybe about 5 years off. So who knows? Maybe someday. Maybe in Mass 3 we'll have some transparent Rachni. And here we are. This is the final concept for the Rachni. This is what everyone agreed on, that everyone approved. We'd gone through different material variations and had figured out how it was going to fight. So it's got its tendrils, and this was the solution painted over the transparent version of the Rachni in a way. Something that once we realized we couldn't do transparent organs, glowing, lit up veins, all of that sort of stuff, we just realized, hey, you know what, the shape is still good. This is a pretty awesome creature, so it'd be awesome to see swarms of this thing coming at you. This is sort of the small, kind of baby spider version of the Rachni. It's a creature that scuttles about, does all sorts of mean little things, bites you in the ankles, all of that sort of stuff. So our little drone running around, once we had the actual design for the adult Rachni, this guy was actually pretty simple. You know, just pull off a few of those things that you assume he would get in his mature stage, and we tried to get sort of this little bloody, eerie glow inside of him, like he looks like he's full of liquid with a black carapace. But yeah, hopefully that translates properly. In Aliens, you have all these eggs all over the place, and they're really creepy and they're really eerie, but we wanted to try something different with shape. You can't just have big circles sitting around all over the place, because A, it's been done, and B, it's kind of it's expected. So it was a chance to try to do something very intimidating, something that was a little unsettling when you saw it, and something that could potentially hurt you. Like, you're not supposed to actually pick these up. We went through a few things. There were these spear sort of eggs, like they almost shot out and stabbed into the ground, so they had like the egg sac hanging from it. And then this variation was sort of the caltrop version, where it looks like something that would be just brutal to give birth to. It would just be awful, like, oh, I can't believe that got pushed out. Or the spikes would form after it was laid. Just sort of a defensive thing. It's something that sort of helps protect it, because you can assume the Rachni don't really care too much about their babies. Rachni Hive. This is where all the Rachni started popping out. This is sort of their entrance level. Thankfully, I just watched a documentary about bees, and we had seen them building up these deposits. So tried to make it look as much like an insect constructed, geometrical, very simple cone, something quick and easy, but with also a lot of stains on the outer lips, just a lot of insect passage. For the Rachni Queen, we had a few specifications. One of them was that we needed to base it off of the original Rachni skeleton, so we couldn't go too far. We weren't making a whole new creature. So we were trying to build up onto the silhouette of the Rachni itself. So here we were just trying to begin the process of saying, okay, what can we add to the arachnite to make it actually look a little bit more like a monarch insect? Another one of the specifications of this creature was that it was never actually going to be seen completely. It's going to be a silhouette, sort of in a murky tube, being studied and researched. So all you ever really see is a shadow and some glowing eyes. So in some ways we had a lot of freedom with the design. So here again, just playing with silhouettes, trying to base something off of the skeleton, but coming up with something a little more regal. This was sort of the direction we ended up going with. Again, you know, even surface treatment, like colors and all of that sort of stuff, didn't really matter because she's going to be pretty obscured, pretty fuzzy. But we figured this would be a nice natural progression for Arachni if it were to develop its queen-like tendencies and become the leader of her people.
Yeah, well, we do see the full version of it. I think you said something about shadows, but then that we do end up seeing it. Oh, maybe it's based on the lighting or something like that, but the alien bug race evolving, getting more and more spines as it gets highly more evolved, at least to a point anyway. So, yeah, I mean, much more to go. Okay, usually I wouldn't say that, but it's just, you know. Anyway, all right, let's look at our favorite, you know, quick-witted, short-raced Solarians.
The Solarian was really fun to develop because he started off as kind of one of the classic aliens. They were thinking that, what if we do sort of the grays and we try to explain the classic Roswell alien and try to explain him in the Mass Effect context. That idea was out the window very quickly because it's dumb, but the direction provided a great launching off point. And so some of the information we knew about these guys was that they were very intelligent, that they were very almost poetic, and at the onset, I got the impression that they kind of had almost the Japanese, or well, I will say Asian approach to war. That it was something that wasn't necessarily good, but there was beauty in it. That there was contemplation and time for quiet and all of that. So these kind of became our warrior poets, at least for me in the early stages. So trying to play up the big giant dark eyes that were deep like wells. Again, it came from the early gray idea, but it had a lot of merit to it, and there was something about a creature having big giant eyes that was very observant, that was always watching you, but that it also had a mouth that was pronounced enough that he could always be kind of sneering at you in disdain, that they knew they were better than you, and they could sort of purse their lips in contempt. So these elements all ended up, continuing and just it played so well. So here we have a fairly, an ornate, big-headed. He's got sort of tattoos on his head and earrings and all of that, and this actually, something about this kind of got people excited. So we played around with some other variations on it. Here we have another Solarian head where we pulled it out to the top, put the nostrils up on the forehead, still playing with the big eyes, the low, long mouth. Again, an alien that thinks it's better than you, and probably is, but is still just one of those things you've got to face when you're new to the galaxy. And here we're just playing with skin texture as well, and what sort of what are they made of? What sort of creature? Where do they come from? What's their environment? All of the questions of alien development. Here was another head. We've got some tattoos on it. This was thinking again of sort of the warrior culture. This is some simple body armor that was meant to be a little bit sleek, kind of like you would imagine this guy would be able to fight hand to hand, that he would be almost, well, you really hate to bring up the term ninja, but that really, I mean, he's very adept at using his body, and that became something that these aliens valued. Here we take that earlier head and give him a bit of a mercenary treatment, showing that not only is he warlike and thoughtful and poetic, but that they also have their mercenaries. They're not so great. They've got their problems as well. And this guy a little bit more roguish. And this was a body designed by Sung Kim. It was interesting. What the head there. We'll show you a better sketch of it later on in the gallery. But the head was approved, and it was kind of a search to find what sort of body would amount to that head. And this was playing off on a lot of the aquatic themes, I think, that seemed to be present there. The blue skin, the kind of shiny, soft, almost like dolphin skin of this guy. Really beautiful work by Sung. And here's Sun Kim's body again, and this ended up being the final. There's something about the concave chest that everyone knew. It was absolutely essential for the character of this creature. That the intellectualists, the thought police in a way of the galaxy had sunken chests. From a narrative point of view, it was just too strong, and it was too unique. I mean, he still fit with the rest of the aliens. He fit the human skeleton, but that was just a nice little element that set him apart. And as I said, here's the sketch that everyone said, aha, yep, that's it, that's the one. We've got the big giant eyes, the brows, the mouth, wide set nostrils, and the upper nostrils on his forehead there with the hole through the head. Looking at it now, it's kind of like, you know, these intellectualists have got this big hole poked right through their head, and it's kind of a joke. In some ways, you know, it started as these kind of horns, but then figured why not just join them together, and that object actually, that one feature of their anatomy ends up coming to play in some of the patterns and materials in their costuming. You may notice it, you may not. If you don't, that's fine, but almost that, you know, much like us with like our eyes or nose or mouth, that became a design element in some of their artwork. Well, and here we have the Solarian in his robes, sort of the ceremonial Solarian priest, intellectual. Actually, you'll notice on the hood on the top there, it's the symbol of the hole in his head, of the hole through his horns, that distinctive shape. It's almost like it was something that they would think of as being noble, and may even be something that despite the fact that they have to cover it, they want to remind you that it's there. And in some ways, I kind of like the idea that maybe they try to play it up even more and draw a bigger hole or a smaller one, or whatever their ego is best served by. There's also an element on this too, that because with their concave chests, I toyed with the idea of what if that was something that they felt self-conscious about. That if you had a really concave chest, that meant you were lower in society. So what if their costuming reflected that? And so we put in some of the elements of like this ring, created this imaginary puffed out chest, that it filled that hole a little bit. That was something that made them feel better. And even though, you know, I mean, it's got a hole poked through it, it's like, you know, you're not hiding anything. To them, at least, it would make their egos feel a little better. And here we have Solarian armor, very complicated helmet shape, very pale treatment. Again, just trying to come up with armor that would suit the character that these guys had already established. And again, here you see the chest filler, the chest piece, the ego piece. Is something that we had a lot of fun with. And there are a few little designs on the armor, some bits and pieces here, something to bring a little bit more of the ceremony back into it. Almost like they bought this armor and it was, you know, it was functional and it worked, but it didn't quite have as much cultural impact as they wanted it to have.
Yeah, I always thought the Solarians were kind of like looking down at me, watching, judging, always watching, judging, watching, and now they're dead. Well, some of the ones we fought in the game anyway. So I think it would have been interesting to kind of go through the idea of the Greys or whatever. But it was a starting out point. Didn't want to. I'm surprised there isn't a Grey alien somewhere in the actual game, but I guess the Solarians might be the closest. So anyway, time to look at our plant-like creature that didn't really actually fight us, just spawned enemies to fight us. Huh? That seemed to be a theme with a lot of the bosses, wasn't it?
With the Thorian, there were a few requirements. We knew this was going to be a boss. This was going to be a big, scary boss. It was going to be locked in place, so it was going to be part of the environment. It wasn't going to be moving around too much, so it was almost more of a sculptural piece. Some of the story points were that it was a creature that was old, just ancient, and that corrupted people, that it infected people like a disease, like it released spores. One of the things that we came across later on as well was that it was kind of meat, kind of plant. It was sort of both at the same time. Here are some early developments where I was almost toying with the idea of it starting as a person, or something not unlike a person, but after thousands and thousands and thousands of years in the exact same spot, doing the exact same thing, doing nothing but consuming and corrupting, that it just became this awful, awful pile, this awful mess. So we have like the idea of the brain being slowly exposed, becoming larger and larger. In the top right there, that's actually brain mass spilling out of the eyes, and that like the mouth has long since become obsolete. That it's taking in nutrients from elsewhere. That the mouth has been almost tied up with flesh. Or the open mouth there is kind of a tribute to the salt liquor from the early Star Trek series. That thing terrified me when I was a child, and I figured I should try in some way to pay some tribute to it. That awful circular mouth that does nothing but suck like a lamprey. Now this is the idea of, it was a really quick sketch, but it was one of those ideas that I just needed to get out. It's sort of like you see mummies on the Discovery Channel, and it's these ancient bodies, and you wonder, what was their life like? What was it like when they walked around? What would it have been like to see their eyes open and them talking through those, mouths? I mean, they wouldn't have been mummified at the time, but it's always compelling to me, the idea of, this person played with children. This person was a child, and so trying to bring some of that emotion into this experience, so that it's someone who's been, whether they did it themselves or had it done to them, they're in a situation that's just awful. That you see them and you wonder, like, oh, what was their humanity like? And it makes it that much worse. So here, the brain has grown out over thousands of years, even at the mouth. Kind of heavy-fisted imagery, but again, at this stage, it's good to just get it out there. Now, as shameful as it is to admit it, in the creature design process, there was an idea that I stumbled upon kind of by accident, kind of for overhearing some conversation that some artists were having, that, no matter how much you try to design scary monsters, if you make them look a little bit like genitalia, they're instantly going to be more terrifying than anything else you could design. So, I'm not going to tell you what this is all based on. We're just going to, I basically already have, we're just going to leave it at that. But this was just a way of trying to mash together a bunch of just terrible organic stuff and see in what configuration is it the worst? Is it the most intimidating? Is it the most just terrifying and you just want to run screaming from the room? And these actually freaked me out. I drew them and wanted nothing to do with them. I wanted them off my desk. Here was an idea that I kind of liked, just the idea of this living infection, that it was, had almost attached itself to the wall and was getting bigger and bigger and was barely able to maintain whatever was keeping it suspended. That it had sort of grown according to its position of awkwardness. This, I like his twisted mouth and a collection of asymmetrical eyes off to the side. I like too, now looking at it, that all of those eyes are looking at the wall. Like, why would you grow eyes on that side when all you can look at is the wall? You can now see the wall with 7 individual eyes and have only one to look out at the rest of the world. All of that sort of stuff, you just go with it. This was coming back to the idea of a mix of meat and plant. This was, more almost thinking of the Thorian more as an organ. Once I started heading in that direction, that this is actually almost like the heart of a building, and that heart is corrupted. Then it became a matter too of looking for different materials, and the tentacles down at the bottom were kind of the idea of a heart that's infected by even grubs, by worms, that it's that's how it eats, but that it's also eating it. Here again was a hanging mass of flesh, something that would always be moving but would never really move anywhere. I saw a video on, again, the Discovery Channel, of an octopus cleaning itself, and for maybe 10 seconds all it does is just there's a flourish of tentacles as it just twists them around, but it looks like this violent flower, and it just stops for a moment. You get this explosion of movement, and I like the idea of these tentacles just slowly moving all over itself, just touching itself. Oh, this one I hate the very most. This was the idea of the Thorian piled up in a tunnel somewhere, that you only got the hint of it, that here's its feeding mechanism or whatever else, feeding and discharge or whatnot, that it's this terrible, terrible thing squeezed into a hole, and you don't want to know how deep it goes. You don't want to know how far it goes. And again, just playing up on the idea of the organs and little teeth growing out of places they shouldn't, and a mass of eyes, and it just again, it was liberating almost to concept this stuff, but at the same time, you're grossing yourself out. And here was the idea of a grub/heart mixture with some tentacles tacked onto it and some eyes. Looking at the eyes, I was kind of remembering Starship Troopers with the brain bug, the big giant creature at the end. It was really, really, really gross, and it would suck people's brains out through a straw. But once this was painted, a story aspect sort of was brought to my attention that this thing is tens of thousands of years old. Not just old, not just big, but ancient. And this looked, I wasn't comfortable with it. It just looked too young, too new, too fresh, too newborn. And I wanted something that was dustier, that was more ancient, something that had almost a little bit more of the Magnolia flavor of it, like, the Hellboy gods that are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years old. And so here we have the Thorian finally, removing the eyes to remove that intelligence, almost painting in sensory organs instead, so that you don't know how it sees you, but you know that somehow through those organs it's aware of your presence. The teeth and tentacles, the pile of mess beneath it, and some of the shells on top. That was sort of the approach of trying to make it seem more dusty, more aged, that it had built the shells over its body to cover as much of its vulnerable side as it could, and then just the mess up top of just whatever organic material is needed to keep this wreck of a body suspended. I love how this guy turned out, and walking up to him in the game is it never ceases to just gross me out. So I think we accomplished our mission.
Oh yeah, especially when all the different dialogue you get from the different characters who respond to the Thorian, they're like, oh. I never, what? For some reason, when I played the game, I never originally thought that it might kind of look like a heart. Now that he talks about it, I'm like, I can totally see that now. And I don't know why I didn't pick up on that when I played it in the full game or whatever. But sometimes people got to point stuff out to you when you're not really thinking about it at the time. So, all right, time to look at the bird-inspired Turian race.
Hi, my name is Sung Kim, and I'm a concept artist for BioWare. I was on another project at the time, Dragon Age, when Mass Effect had asked me to work on a few concepts, particularly the Turian. This concept here was an early sketch of the Turian. It was very influenced by bird-like features. The designers had mentioned that they wanted a bird race, and essentially it was trying to capture that in the head with sort of like a beak-like facial features and feathers, but ultimately this was a little bit too bird-like. This one here was very similar facially, but I just tried playing around with the body and was sort of influenced, I guess, with the Batman animated style body, very triangular, blocky upper body, give it sort of an imposing look. Another concept of the Turian. Ultimately, this was a little too far the other way. I wanted to get away from bird features. I guess this one sort of fell in the what is that category. It was too far gone. There were some interesting things that I pulled from it that actually stayed on the actual Turian that was used. I guess the more I was playing around with the musculature and the physiology of the Turian, the more I wanted it to be sort of elegant and long and have sort of a exoskeleton feel to him, and to make it look, I guess, fast and agile, and essentially hoping that the characteristics of the head were the most prominent features. And unfortunately I was running out of time doing concepts on the Turian, so I never got to fully actualize the lower portion of the body, more details of the rest of him. Tighter version of the head. It was sort of my intention to have that plated feel over the face, almost as though you can imagine that over years of evolution, they were birds and their beak had just evolved into plating over the entirety of the face and in areas of the body. Hopefully carrying some of the characterizations of the bird eyes, I think plays a big part in the success of the concept. I wanted to have a certain intelligence to the race. Yeah, and that's about it.
So after we designed the Turian, the designers came forward to us that Saren, our main bad guy, was a Turian. So we had to decide how much we wanted to take the actual Turian design and make it different. Was he radically different from the original Turians? Was he huge? Was his head different? Was he had extra limbs? So this drawing here was actually kind of started to figure out the head. we were starting to work on his actual clothing. Very important to get cool villain clothing. So Matt Rhodes actually was looking at a lot of robes, cloth. This is the concept for that. We ended up having to not do the cloth. It was just going to be too hard. And the designers were also worried about your main villain. This game is all about armor, your different kinds of armors and shields. And your main bad guy has cloth. You know, they were worried that it feels like you should be able to shoot him with one shot. So after we found out that cloth was a no-go, we went with armor. So we played around with quite a few different armor variations. Then we started to really look at pushing the design a bit more. What we kind of came up with after talking to Casey, he wanted to have more kind of a Geth arm on him. Then he started being transferred more into the machine. I mean, he has the blue lights in there. Maybe he has one large Geth arm really kind of moved in with hoses. Really iconic feature of him. In this concept, you can see he's still quite thin. He's still the Turians were this very sinewy race. We ended up bulking him up quite a bit just to make him feel more massive. And then the one drawing on the right is just some detail about how the hoses start to go into his head. He's getting turned over to the machine, the blue lights in there. So this is pretty well the final one. We just ended up adding more dirt onto him, a bit more weathering, almost blood splattering on him. That he's been through hell and back. This is the concept for Saren's head. We did a lot of concepts for this. Probably did about 25 or so. Matt Rose and myself all worked on these. Talk about a lot of people being included in design. We had Sung did the original Turian head. Matt did some variations on this. He actually painted all the robes around here and all the clothing on Saren, and I actually worked on the head. Some of the things we did to kind of get a different look was we took some microscopic pictures of insects, and the large bone structure that comes out from the back of his eye is actually the stinger off a mosquito. We just kind of incorporate that into the design, and how those grooves work with just the actual photo being overlaid on top. The pistons, we wanted to kind of start getting some mechanisms in his jaw, like he's starting to get eaten away, and he's starting to get hollow in there with these blue lights kind of shining in through there. We eventually took his eye and made that blue also like it was mechanic. We looked at, I think Transformers, the movie, had a poster come out, and we looked at that eye a bit as a bit of reference. This concept here is the Turian monster, a Saren monster I should say. After Saren gets destroyed, gets eaten away, he comes back to life, as they always do. I don't know how many times you have to try and kill him. He turns into a monster. So this is him actually at that point. We ended up animating him to the hopper pose. So we meet him all on all fours. He gets eaten away, he's missing his jaw, he has all these wiring being exposed. Matt Rhodes has him kind of burning up on here. This concept was something real like. It was very hard to model though. We gave it to James the modeler, and I mean he did a great job on it because there was a lot of questions unanswered with this. How do these hinges work? What's it made out of? How much of these hoses do I have to build in here? And so on. But the final model turned out really good.
Oh yeah, I like the. I mean, obviously it looks better in the concept art, but the Saren Husk model or whatever was like definitely freaky. You know, more of an undead machine monstrosity or something like that just hops around all willy-nilly, wimbly-pimbly, or whatever. So, all right, let's look at the unrealized concept stuff that they thought they could do but never made into the game, or maybe bits and pieces did. All games have this. Most of the stuff we'll never see.
At an early stage, it was great to have other people contribute. We ended up getting a lot of different sketches of all sorts of different stuff, and it's great being able to tap in other people's minds as well, because you always see stuff that you wouldn't expect. This I found interesting. Just you got the tiny little arms with articulated fingers right beside big elephant feet. It's kind of a neat idea. I think it was based on the body was drawn off of a head that was drawn earlier. Yeah, again, the 6 limbs would have probably been difficult to animate, but I mean we've done crazier stuff. Here was an idea toyed with earlier on by me. There was kind of a big floating whale, some sort of huge giant fish-like thing that would have a big gaping maw that it could pull you into. Of course, swimming never really, and ocean or sea exploration never really factored into this, and there's no need for something quite like this, but it sort of bears some familiarity with the gas or the gas creature, the gas bag that ended up making it in. These are just little thumbnail sketches of alien heads that again you're testing it out, you're playing with it. What can you get away with? And each one has something else that's being emphasized. Here is the eyes forward, no need for a mouth or for a nose. He's got the heavy set jaw. I've always loved this guy. So gross,
Just absolutely gross. Got his squidgy little eyes and just massive tentacles for a mouth. I would have loved to see this guy talking, where it's like if with every syllable he utters, those little tentacles just go twirling around in all sorts of directions. Would have been great. Here's a face that was trying to toy with the surreal a little bit, something stretched out where it's all you get are the eyes, no mouth, no nose, and that's always intimidating. That's always something that weirds you out a little bit. It's really the definition of alien. Again, little thumbnail sketches. Here's a guy with some big octopus tentacle lips, mouth that are sort of pushed together or thrown over his shoulder or whatnot. But again, just almost trying to make aliens that look uncomfortable, or like you almost look at them and you wonder, like, is this obscene? I don't know. I can't tell if I'm allowed to be looking at this or not. Here is a very 70s sci-fi painting alien, something overly elegant, overly we think welcome to space, welcome to the space station. Not really quite what we were looking for. This guy is angry at something. Again, just taking creatures and almost like just poking holes through their heads. Like, what happens if you scoop out the back and just leave almost like a hammerhead shark thing with his eyes on the edges, and then I guess give him pigtails? Who knows why that ended up happening, but there you go. You're forced to deal with that reality. Here's the idea of, even piling stuff up on the face, ridges, and almost look like barnacles on his chin now that I look at them now, but I like the idea too of having wizened old faces in the middle of this alien shape. Here is one of the results of an exercise that we did where we would take a head and try to come up with a body that matched it. So here we have the long, thin head with a long, thin body, trying to maintain a little bit of that elegance to it. Here's another concept done up by a member of the team. Again, just toying with the shapes, trying to, we need aliens, let's throw more aliens on the pile. Here was another submission. Again, it's great to see this stuff because you'll always see something you never thought about. Here were some animals that were sketched as ambients. Just the idea of some sort of tree monkey or something that would hop from limb to limb, or crawl up underneath your spaceship when you landed. So toying with big eyes and monkeys, and I like the little ape dog in the bottom there. Here was the idea of trying to come up with a creature that was just big and gigantic and lumbering, almost like a brontosaurus, but trying to think of maybe big horses or something, but the size of dinosaurs. It's just kind of an intriguing idea. More creatures. You can see that the kangaroo and the koala, panther horse in the bottom, and the little fish with legs. This was a lot of fun because you just go drawing animals and then eventually just start mixing and matching all of the stuff that you've learned, and it's something that I would love to do more of in my spare time. The space cow. The space cow was drawn as a little joke, and I'm almost sad that joke didn't come all the way to fruition in the game, but maybe at some point later on. This little guy was great, chewing on his grass with his 3 horns and his big, giant, puffy body. This was a direction that I actually really enjoyed, and could almost come into play on another project at some point if I'm allowed. That would be kind of great. This was messing around a lot with, much like Sebulba from Star Wars, playing with which limbs become the priority. The idea of what if the hind legs were no longer as important as the front, and then he started to develop another set of legs in front, so it starts to play with your perceptions a little bit. And I like the idea of these big, heavy boned faces, almost like scarab beetles, rhinoceros beetles that fight each other, that have these big shapes on them that are almost in the abstract. It really lets you know you can draw almost any shape you want, and it probably exists somewhere. It was more development along the lines of this fighting 4-limbed creature, where his legs have almost become like a tail, that I really liked. It was kind of like trying to come at the T-Rex from a different angle. Here's a sketch of a creature that ended up getting colored up, a bug, and also thinking of flying creatures, creatures that were maybe like birds, but that came at it from a different section. Like here, in the top right, a creature with wings that are mouths, or in the bottom, an insect. It's almost looking like a Pokemon now, but where its ears have become gliders. Here's playing with more ambient creatures, the idea of birds that, the top right doesn't even have a head. There's no need for a head. Or Sid Mead curved parrot. That was almost a bit more of a joke, but flared out tails and little beaks, and it was just great to mix and match pieces. Here's one of the early designs that kind of inspired the gas bag. It was summertime, so it was mosquito season, and they were pretty much what I hated the most at that point. So I thought, what would I want to see the least in the galaxy? More mosquitoes. Like, you could travel all this way, and you think you're going to get away from them, but you don't. They're bigger and they're scarier, and they can suck more blood. There was also a drawing of a flea. That was just some reference drawing, trying to figure out how they work. There was more four-limbed creatures. This one was a little bit more, not necessarily peaceful, because it still has a fairly aggressive beak that looks like it could be used for pushing other creatures out of the way, but something that was almost verging on a water creature or something like that, but its tail had reached way up high. And looking at these, they were actually based on flea's architecture originally, like a flea's limbs and their setup, but then translated into something a little heavier. And again, some more alien submissions by some of the other people on the team. It's interesting colors, this squid-like creature. There was a very, 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 very early sketch done before a lot of the story stuff had been figured out, but I just like the idea of a big fat guy in a tube covered in cables. I mean, who doesn't love that, really, honestly? This was kind of funny. Here's, I was mentioning earlier that there was the idea that, did get cut, but the idea of playing with the grays in some way, that the Roswellian sort of alien would come into things, and you would see how they really fit into the grand scheme. I was just trying to come up with some possibly different shapes. Somehow the one on the right is wearing pajama pants wrapped in a blanket. Can't explain that, but there you go. It's on the cutting room floor. I loved the idea of having these little terrible things walking around that never hurt you, but just looked stupid and just made you laugh whenever they walked around the corner. So that's what the things on the left were. Just these ugly little grubs with 2 legs or 4 legs or whatever. They're just something to take your mind off of galactic problems, because, hey, look at those guys. Their lives probably suck. Then on the right, just trying to play with, again, just attitude in aliens' faces. Trying to play off of, like, really human emotion in foreign faces, which is always the task, but this is sort of trying to be more intentional about it. And in some ways trying to think, what would Jim Henson do? Here are some alien faces. These came into play a little bit later, some of it, like the separated jaw on the top right, but insects and spider faces and slug faces, and what is the grossest thing possible? Sometimes it felt like that was the task. It was like, what's the grossest thing you can come up with?
Well, what would Jim Henson do with the grossest thing he could ever come up with? Well, something that never gets realized anyway, but it's still kind of cool to see what happens if you jot down ideas. But then again, what the saying is, like, everyone has good ideas, but not all of them. Not all good, or everyone has an idea, but it's how you implement it. Maybe that's the word I was thinking of. But anyway, finally, but surely, the Volus, the banking clan themselves. The Technocracy clan, well, oh wait, that's the wrong series. But anyway, let's see how the Volus were put into concept.
The Volus design was one of those fun ones that came about from an odd sort of direction. It came at us sideways. While we were working on one alien, it sort of, one alien plugged into another alien, and hey, we could borrow from that pool. These sketches were originally environmental spacesuits, kind of like snowsuits. Suits that were meant to wrap around armor that looked a little closer. Like, people spend a lot of time in these icy environments, and so they had equipment that suited that. They came into play a little bit later on, which was kind of fun. It's always great when stuff you didn't intend to use comes back. These were more experiments with the space scavenger race, trying to mix and match pieces, trying to come up with, I found a much better space boot on this derelict ship, so I'll take that, sew it in, or tape it on, or who knows what. But again, just trying to play with shapes, playing with what works. Here was almost a more nomadic version of the Volus. These were nomadic space scavengers, kind of like Bedouins from the outer fringes of the galaxy. Here we're just trying to come up with different shapes for gas masks. Trying to, like, what does an industrial fringed edge of the galaxy stealing from junkyards gas mask look like? This was a sketch that people like. People really kind of dig that, but we needed a little bit more work on it yet. I like his little gas mask shooting out of that big long hood. Here was closer to what we were talking about. This was something that started to work. The head was a little bit more articulated. The gas mask was intriguing because it's just these 3 circles. That's very simple, but somehow your mind makes a shape out of that and you get attached to it. Here was a little long-nosed version of this scavenger. It's kind of a different take on the gas mask idea. We kind of need to see these little guys lumbering around through the trash. And here he is. This is one of the first approved concepts for creatures. One of the first guys ever built, actually. Everyone liked this guy. It was one of those things that had appeal. It kind of softened the galaxy in a way. It softened this adventure where it's still serious. You could still believe in this thing, but at the same time, it showed the width and the breadth of our universe. We weren't going to be afraid to do different shapes to try some other stuff. We actually ended up having to build a skeleton for this guy all by himself. He wouldn't quite fit on the human skeleton, so he's also the first real creature that we ever afforded ourselves. I like how all the little details worked, and actually the model on this guy, the guys took it really far. And the little scrapes in his armor shine because when the metal is exposed underneath. And if you can get a chance to look at him up close and get him to stand still for any period of time in the game, you really should have a look. And here's a cleaned up version of him. This is sort of the red and white sleeked out version, not necessarily the junkyard inspired edition, but a little guy that never comes out of his suit. You never quite know what he looks like, but seems pleasant enough, so no one really minds.
One of the first utilized creatures. Interesting to know all that. But yeah, I liked all the talk about the art. Well, obviously that's what it was, and the concept art. And Sun Kim, I think it was. Yeah, he definitely had for a knack for aliens, as you could see from his concept art. So he definitely knew he was doing in that regard. So, well, that's it for the creatures of Mass Effect. And yeah, you could tell how long that took. That the others will take just as well. So I kind of wanted to show off bits of it. I was kind of almost considering showing the whole thing, but with how long it is, I'm not sure, and I don't know if it'd be fair to the people who made this content to show any more other than the basic concepts of it. But I'll leave it up. I'll leave it here for now. Maybe in a future date, if people are interested, maybe I'll show the rest of the images as well as the documentaries on it as well. If people are invested in it, like I said, it's kind of in that gray area because I don't think anyone's really has it or shown this anywhere. But it'd be insincere of me to show the whole thing without people interest, or maybe I could transform it more over the conversations, or maybe just talk about it myself and leave out the commentary, to their own. So, but anyway, I hope you enjoyed my look, at least on the bonus stuff. Yeah, there's a few other things here like gamer pictures and stuff like that you get. All the characters and everything like that, and the concept art. We'll look over that. Like I said, if people are interested, I'll keep showing that. But yeah, that's it for Mass Effect, at least generally speaking, unless I come up with anything else, or maybe I might do a video or two about the Legendary Edition, because even though I'm not going to buy it, it doesn't mean that I can't go about the high seas to get access to it, if you know what I mean. But yeah, I hope enjoyed my playthrough of one of my favorite games. Maybe not of all times, but definitely up there in that top 25 section. There might be a few others, but it's definitely up there. I love this series, and I wish it hadn't gone the way it did. And I guess with the Legendary Edition, maybe future installments will improve, or maybe it'll make a comeback in a way. But if not, we got a great game and a trilogy. I think overall is great. So. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.